Alright, people. I'm Jesse. This is Iowa Audio Review. And this is my Behringer reference amplifier A800, the predecessor to the A500. And for how popular the A500 kind of was, I'm not going to say it's super popular compared to like AV receivers, but I think it was fairly popular and it's well known. The A800 doesn't seem to be quite as popular, and I don't know if it's just because it's Class D or what, but anyway, tonight we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to do this review kind of a little backwards instead of starting at the bench and ending up over here. I'm just going to start right here. We're going to get right into it. And the way I run this is I have my music PC right here, my HP Pro Desk, with the Asus Zonar sound card in it that is feeding optical, as you can see right here, to my Emotiva PT100 preamp DAC, and then this feeds signal out to this. And this can do up to a 4-volt line out, I believe. Let me get situated here. Now, just to get right into it, before we look at the back and everything and whatnot, I've been messing around to see, because I have suspicions it's not putting out as much power as Behringer says, which it should be, because some of the tests for the A500, it just the THD was getting a bit high, but and I don't know exactly how this correlates or anything because I'm not an electrical engineer, but I have my kilowatt over here, and as you can see, just sitting here making no sound. Where are we at? We make sure we're on watts. Yep, we're on watts. It's average, I'd say, right around, we'll just call it 26 watts. And I can say, as I sit here, everything's turned on, and it's quiet. There's no hissing. I mean, if you get close enough, I have it hooked to these Yamaha S803s still, but I mean, if you get close enough, I put my microphone like right up to it. Here. No. I mean, if you put your ear right up to it, yeah, you can hear a little barely. But I also have the volume gain or whatever at max. If you just bump it down a bit, depending on how much power you need. Let me get back up here now. Yeah, it's to the point where you almost got to listen for it. So I've been experimenting with running these at max and at slightly lower levels. I mean, even at max in my space, since I'm not using this at a desk and I'm sitting back from it, with this the way it is, it's dead quiet from my chair 6 feet away. But anyway, as you'll see, that's that. We'll come back up here and we'll knock these all the way down. And some of you are probably like, duh. But yeah, it doesn't change. Seems like it's always consuming roughly 25 watts. Amps is 0.41. And volts obviously is going to be 120 because it's America. So, and then, well, here. Even, I don't think this will make any difference, but the preamp is also putting out nothing. So, we'll set these back to max where they're typically, I believe, supposed to be. We'll run this up just a bit. And we'll start playing some sound. And that's pretty moderate level. It's not loud, just standard listening. As you can see, it's not even enough to get the, I don't know, the little digital view meter here to even come up. And the wattage has not changed really at all. Amps haven't changed either. So we're gonna turn this up a little bit more. So now we're just starting to get a flicker on the screen. We're on the view meter. You see there? I'll come back over here. Nope, still the same. I don't know. I'm just experimenting. If you're an electrical engineer, you feel free to chime in. Keep turning this up. Go up quite a bit. This is about where I usually have it. Now the meters are starting to go. And now finally the power has started to go up a little bit, but not much. But barely. Even at this volume, so according to the kilowatt, this unit's only pulling 26, 27 watts. And if I'm having a really good time, now if I try to push this up to clipping, I don't know if you guys can hear me. Okay. Hope you didn't have headphones on, because they're probably blown now. But the idea was, I've been just messing around with my kilowatt. I've had this thing, and I forgot I even had it. But I was messing around with this kilowatt, because I wanted to see when this thing's really a rockin', you know, because it's Class D and it's supposed to be efficient, yada, yada, yada. And by the way, it almost never gets hot. I could do that, you know, for half the night, drinking beer, working on stuff, and it gets warm maybe. But even right now, it's everywhere is cool to the touch still. But yeah, I forgot I had the kilowatt over there, and it's kind of surprising that I think at most during some of the bass hits there, it was hitting like 55 watts, and I don't know exactly how accurate that is as far as you know, monitoring how much wattage or amperage is something like this would be, pulling from the wall. And this is plugged in to this power strip here, which is plugged into this outlet. And this outlet, it runs, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet to its own 20 amp breaker. So it's not hooked to a whole other daisy chain of other outlets in the house. It's the only outlet on this. It's a very short run, and it's the only outlet on that breaker. I did it specifically because I was going to put my stereo here. So try to get a good, clean source of power. But anyway, yeah, I was just kind of, because as you've seen on the meter here, we were getting really close to clipping. I mean, wouldn't have taken much more and it would have started clipping. And I've tried to where I'll back these down a little bit and then push more out of the Emotiva, because the highest I had this during that demonstration was 50, and it goes to 80. I'm assuming at 80, that's when you're getting the 4 millivolt or 4 volts line out. But either way, to get that volume that I just had it at, the view meters almost always end up around clipping. And it's usually right around, I'm going to be pretty wide, right around 40 to 60 watts. Anyway, my Marantz down here, my SR4021, is 80 watts per channel, far less than this, and it seems to get just as loud. Granted, when I have it on the kilowatt, it is drawing more power, but it's getting just as loud. I don't know, maybe the way the Class D circuitry works and stuff, that's just not an accurate way to test it. But I supposedly will get to the wattage on this. But I'm going to turn around, get everything set up. That was the fun little intro demonstration. And I'm going to get my phone on a pod here so I quit blocking the lens with my finger. Hang on. Okay, I've decided to add this in kind of after the fact, but just in case there is someone that is going to try and use this amplifier in this scenario, since this is just an amplifier, typically you would want to use a preamp or some sort of mixer or something in front of it to control the volume and not use these gain knobs here. But if you're on some sort of budget or whatever reason, you're looking at this amp because it is arguably a decent amount of power for the money. If you want to just run a CD player into it or your phone without a preamp, I mean, you could plug your phone directly into it or your computer, which I have done, and it all works fine. Typically, you don't want to, running a computer straight into it and using the Windows volume control would work, but it's just not the best scenario, because if you were to have these all the way up and Windows volume is known to unmute itself or change time to time when you bump stuff or whatever, or certain apps that kind of just do what they want with the volume, having your computer hooked directly to this and only relying on the Windows, software volume control could be a little risky. Phone, possibly the same thing. You could plug your phone directly into it and control the volume per se with your phone. But in this case, we're going to hook a CD player. I have my CD player hooked directly to it. So the only way to control the volume is with these, which I'm sure at some point somebody will buy one of these and do that, or wonder if you can do that. And the answer is yes, you can. The input sensitivity on this, from what I can tell right now, is fine with what most CD players would have would be a 2-volt line level output. So, but what I wanted to show you is I have both knobs all the way down. If we hit play on here, and I'm really quiet, I'm sure if you have headphones on or anything, you should be able to hear that. So, if that's going to be an issue, even when the volume's all the way down, obviously some audio does still leak through even when the gain knobs are all the way down. Now, if you have your CD player remote, you pause it, whatever, fine, but yeah, it's not dead silent even when you turn those knobs all the way down. Now, as far as, if you don't have a preamp or mixer, you're going to have to try to keep these lined up or even, and that's not always the best method, but it can be done. It's just kind of silly. And as you can tell, when it's hooked up this way, it doesn't take much to get it going pretty loud. Yeah, it don't take much to get the meters going. And I didn't do it with these Sonys because I don't want to possibly destroy them, but I hooked up some crappier speakers and cranked these knobs to about half with the CD player hooked directly to it, and that was enough to push these bars well into the clipping. So I don't know, you could, I don't know if you'd ever push these, have these turned all the way up with a direct input. I hope not, but yeah. I figured I'd just throw this in because it's always one of those things. It's not the way it's supposed to be used, but there could be somebody out there that's working up to it where they buy the amplifier and then later they're going to get a preamp or a mixer, or they just don't care and they find one of these used for cheap and, I'm going to hook my freaking CD player up to it and, whatever. Yes, it can be done. It's just not a good idea. And it's not like the Crown XLS 1000 where See, the issue with that is I went back and looked at that situation. The Crown requires or wants a 1.4 volt input, and most CD players do a 2 volt. Some don't. Some, we'll say residential or civilian consumer equipment or CD players put out less than 2 volts. It's usually anywhere from 0.775 to 2 volts. It just so happens the CD player I was trying to use with it was under 1.4. This CD player, I believe this one does put out 2 volts, but it is a higher quality CD player. So in this case, I think this thing's sensitive enough, even if you were to hook a CD player to it that is less than 2 volts, you would still get plenty of power out of it. Not that I'm recommending it. There's a handful of ways to get your hands on some sort of cheap mini preamp, and maybe I'll list a few in the description, but I think that's it for this little side subject. The next thing you should be seeing is over at the desk. We're going to take a closer look. Okay, got her over here on the table. Oh, where was I? Let's take a rundown first on specs. Now, it came with a start guide here, but really the only page in here I found useful, unless you really are green or new to this stuff. There is control, like diagrams in here where they give you numbers, and then I don't know, wherever the diagram is, you know, kind of point things out to you. And there's quite a few different languages in here, which really leaves the English portion pretty small. But this is probably the main page that most people are interested in, because I have not been able to find this information via like a PDF or anything online. Even on Behringer's site, the PDF I download doesn't have this. And we're going to start a little bit from the top. I'm not going to go over everything on here just because I don't think everybody's interested in it, really. Maybe I'll just hold it like this, and you can try like pause it and full screen it. You know, I'll go like this. And there you go. Anyway, power output, wattage, 8 ohms, 220 watts times 2, 4 ohms, 400 watts times 2, 8 ohm bridged mono, 800 watts and 8 ohms. And I'm assuming, I think you can bridge this in 4 ohm. I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't actually say it on here, so I'm not going to recommend it. But yeah, even in 8 ohm, it's 800 watts times 1. The inputs we'll go over when we actually look at the thing. Class D, of course, has short circuit current, DC fault, AC fuse, thermal cut. Distortion, 4 ohm at 150 watt at 1 kilohertz is 0.08. Damping factor of 160 at 8 ohms. Frequency response at negative 10 dB below rated output power is 20 to 20 kilohertz. Frequency response at negative 3 decibels is 10 hertz to 30 kilohertz. Signal to noise is 100 decibel A-weighted 20 to 20 kilohertz. And voltage gain at level control max, balance 30 decibel, RCA is 41 decibel. And then this is not really on the A500, the input sensitivity at line level was, I think, they listed it at 1.67 volts or something like that. On here they have XLR plus 4 dBu, where RCA is negative 10 dBV. Which I looked into it for a split second, that negative 10 dBV should be fine if you want to plug in your standard 2 volt line out, you know, your typical household CD players, your computer, your phone, whatever you want to hook to it. You shouldn't need a preamp to boost your line level for this. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not very savvy on this kind of information, but I've run my CD player directly to it, and it's just as loud as when I pretty much run it out of the preamp. So, power consumption at 1/8 rated power is 90 watts. Weighs 7 pounds. 3.5 or 3.7 inches by 19 inches by 8.7 inches. So the thing is small, light, and everything you expect Class D to be. So let's take a closer look. It pretty much looks just like the A500. I think on the A500, this trim around this was silver. I'm not 100% sure. I actually haven't looked at a picture of an A500 for a while, but if I remember right, the A500, this was silver. Maybe the knobs were silver, where this one seems more blacked out. But other than that, it's pretty darn much the same. You get a little bit of venting on the side, some screws. There's not really a whole lot to go over. I mean, on, off, nice, heavy, clicky power button. Pretty smooth with a slight click volume or gain knobs. I don't know if these are the same ones that were in the A500. Something to do, they had issues with these knobs in the A500s. I don't know if they corrected that on the A800s or not. We will find out though, because I've been in contact with the founder of Audio Science Review Forum, and he takes in a lot of audio gear and does some pretty in-depth scrutinizing on this stuff. And he's already done an A500, and the A500, according to his in-depth review and test, the A500 did not do very good. So I offered to send him my, A800, and let him toy with it for a while and test it and compare it to the A500 and see if the A800 is, worth upgrading to, or is it worth its, weight? Because I think these MSRP for, depending on where you go, I'm going to say right around 250 to 300. And so far, my experience, I think it's worth that. The reason I was going to wait to do this review until after I got it back from Audio Science Review so I could see everything he found out about it, but I decided to do my review first, my initial review first, because as of right now, I like this amplifier. I like the sound of it. I think combined with the Emotiva preamp, it's one of the best sounding setups I've had. I haven't had any issues with it. It's powerful. It's not harsh. The bass is tight and I don't know what you want to say, fast, and it's just it just sounds very clean and powerful if you like that sound signature. But I figured I would do my review as is now, because I'm worried if it, after the thing is scrutinized and if it comes back with bad results, it may taint my thoughts about it. So right now I'm still in love with the thing. I haven't submitted the background check on her yet. So we'll start right here. Power, twist lock or speak on connectors. You get a nice set of binding posts, and you know what I'm going to do. Depth check. These are some nice deep binding posts. They accept the whole nanner. They take the whole thing. They take it all. Yup. Which usually binding posts on the actual amplifiers don't have the shallow problem. It's usually just on audio foolery or audio foolery, speakers. Like a lot of speakers we're reviewing, they're very nice. They look the part. They pretty much sound the part, but when you really look at them close, they're shallow. Yep, stereo, mono, switch. I'm pretty sure a lot of this is, if people have spent a lot of time around these, this is pretty common stuff. I believe this is a pinout for your channels here. If that would focus, there we go. Was there any notes on the back of here? Designed and engineered in Germany, but I bet it's made in China. We'll get there. Class 2 wiring. They give you a little diagram for your bridge. We'll come across over here. There's another little balanced diagram there. Unbalanced is right there. 10 dB view. XLRs, 1/4 inch RCAs, and I believe another pinout diagram. So it's on the back of this thing. It's quite featured. You can hook about anything to this thing, which is, I think, why a lot of people like them. It's small. This thing, I have not ever had an A500, obviously, but comparing pictures and specs, this is smaller, way lighter, and supposedly much more powerful than the A500. So long as Behringer didn't actually screw up the amplifier end of it, the physical and connection end and everything should keep this thing on track to be a successor. So I don't know if this voids the warranty or not. I've already been burned by Behringer once, if you've watched my NX1000D video. But, it's for you guys. Plus, if I can't remember his name, the audio science review guy wants to open this thing up and look at it, at least this way, I've already opened it and he's not voiding my warranty. Because I will pretty much give him permission to open it up and look at the inside if he wants. Whatever it takes for him to get a good old review on this thing, or good information on this thing. Yeah, metal cover. And the reason I'm sending it to him too is because between what Behringer gives you on their website, which is pretty much nothing, and this one page here, there's not a ton of information about this. I mean, I don't know if all this information, if Behringer is super honest about it or not. They might be, they might not. But the whole point of sending it to the Audio Science Review is he will find out. So, there we go. That's the inside of a Behringer Reference A800. Let's see, we'll put the front up here at the top, and we'll just come in close. Well, let me get around here so we can get in there all deep like. There's a front knob. You guys that know stuff about the front knobs, is that, I don't know if that's better than the ones that were in the A500 or if it's the same. And then you got these caps. I don't know, but I've heard the Capzon cap brand is actually kind of a cheap brand. I don't know. If you know, chime in. Yeah, that's the whole thing. I'm not an audio engineer. I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm showing you guys because I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that know exactly, possibly exactly what's going on in here, and you can look at this and be like, yeah, that's crap, or that, or that looks pretty well done. There's the power. Don't know what any of this other stuff is. I'm just going to keep sweeping around, trying to get it to focus on these numbers for you guys. There we go. Some more large caps. What were these over here? 1200s? 22 or something? Looks like all the caps are by that Capzon or whatever brand. Yep. Take it all in for anyone that knows what this is. Yeah, I don't know if you want to, if anybody cares what the numbers are on those chips. Here, let me grab another light here. Well, whoops. Let's see if we can get this a little brighter in here. I don't know if my phone will zoom in that close and focus or not. Kind of. And the other problem is getting the light to hit the chips just right, so you can see what they actually say on them. Anyway, there's the other knob up front. Ooh, apparently that wasn't snapped into place. There it is. Yep. And then we'll flip her around here. And this is the 1/4 inch, the XLRs 1/4 inch, and then the RCAs. And the binding posts. These look nice and heavy. Good connections, I guess. And then your twist lock, speak-ons, whatever. And then 2 heavy cords to go from here up to the power switch. I'm sure some of you already noticed. And then there's a fuse down there in the corner. So yeah, like I said, this is just an amplifier, so there's not really a whole lot to go over. I mean, it's a lot like the A500, but so far, I can't say I really have any complaints about it. Although for being 220 watts times 2 and 8 ohms, and most speakers I have are 8 ohms or somewhere between 6 and 8. I don't know if it's just me, but like I said, my Marantz down there, it's only 80 watts times 2. Seems to get just as loud, at least to my ears, or when I use the decibel meter on my phone, I think they're right around, I want to say it was like 90, low 90 decibels in this space. And where the Marantz does have a little bit more room and will get louder, this will too. And I can't tell if the Marantz is clipping or not because it doesn't have meters on the front. This, by time, if I'm really rocking out, having fun, just kind of where sometimes I listen to my music, sometimes I just like it really loud. This thing, I actually push this thing to just start touching the clipping. And I did not think that would be an issue with a 220 watt times 2 amplifier. It's kind of the whole reason I got this. So either maybe I'm doing something wrong, I don't think so, or it's just I know wattage and power is not linear or whatever. Well, what do I want to say? Sometimes, see, like I have even my older, like my H.H. Scott 355R, I think that's 45 watts times 2, and that thing gets plenty loud. Basically, what I'm saying is all my other amplifiers I have that are far, considered far less powerful than this, all get just as loud. This thing, the only thing I notice the difference is maybe when it is super loud, it still has a little bit more balls, where the other ones kind of sound like they're really starting to run out of power. Not distorting or sounding bad, but you can kind of tell sometimes in the bass, they're kind of just running out of power. Where even when this thing is getting loud, it still seems like it's got good power. But it is on the verge of clipping, so I don't know. That's why I'm making this video, because then somebody can be like, hey, you're an idiot. This is why it's doing that, and then I'll know. But anyway, I think that's going to wrap this one up. There's just not much to go over with this. The sooner I get this video done, I can get it back in its box and all boxed up and shipped off to Audio Science Review, and he can get started scrutinizing this thing, and we can get a much closer, detailed look on this. And depending on what he finds, I'll probably do a follow-up video about it, and I'll either be selling it or keeping it. So, all right, guys. Thanks for watching. Good night.